Is it good?
There we go. All right.
All right. So joined here this evening with Joanna Crowder, author of a brand new book, a week old.
Pretty much, yes.
A
March
week old.
21st. Yeah.
Yeah, how exciting. Ph.D. in syncretism and philosophy.
In philosophy,
Yep.
with metaphysical counseling.
Okay, yeah, how awesome. I first came to find out or discovered your name through your interviews with Santos Bonacci, of course. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But and which is largely in part to how I came up or stumbled upon syncretism. So big big appreciation there. So and you had a video out. Your first one was Bridging the Gap, and that was really a cool one. Really a good, easy introduction into the idea, because a lot of this topic is very heavy. It's not something you're just going to sit down and and discover in just a 1 hour video. So, but anyway, but yeah, so you've covered a lot of that, and your new book. Why don't you talk about your new book? Give us the background on that.
So it's called Spring Manifestation. And basically I've been following Santos now for, I think, about 5 or 6 years. The last 2 years, I'm like, I don't know. They don't count. Yeah. So I don't know what year we're on.
Yeah, right.
So, but for a while. Uh-huh. And so I took what I have been learning, not just from him, but I learned a lot from him while I was getting my degree actually it started with, when I was getting my master's, that I tried to write my thesis on meditation. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was something going to be quick and something I could do really fast, until I stumbled across Santos Bonacci and Bill Donahue and a whole bunch of people. I just started opening up my eyes to things that I was like, wait, this is going to take a lot longer than I thought. Yeah, I had to uncover all these pieces. And so, fast forward to now, after the last 2 years, the last 24 months of my life, I started with the idea, which is actually chapter 1, called The Idea, where I had an idea, and it started on March 21st. And so every single, not month, but every single time we went into a new sign astrologically. So when we went into Aries, my chapter was based on all the influential energies that would come across from the aspects of Aries, and how that influenced my life, what was going on surrounding me, like what was happening around the world, what was happening that had everything to do with Aries. And so I wrote it in a journal format, kind of like, here's my idea, this is what I'm going to do. And at first it was more of like, just to be accountable, to make myself accountable for this idea that I had. And then as I wrote it, things started happening. Obviously, the world turned upside down, and that was right in the middle of my book, going, wow. I guess it left me in a cliffhanger, like, wait, I guess I know my ending just as much as you do. And here we go. So,
great timing.
Yeah, it felt effortlessly though. Because the chapters came to me before I even started writing them, as far as the names, the same thing with the title, the same thing with everything. It was just unfolding kind of naturally. So I was like, okay, this has an ending already there. And I followed just what I've been learning from syncretism and putting that into layman's terms. So actually, do you want me to read you the back?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, that'd be great.
Okay, so there's my bio. Actually, let me read my bio, because I guess you have a new crowd.
Yeah.
I'm like, a lot of people don't know who I am. So Joanna has her Ph.D. in philosophy, specializing in metaphysical counseling from the University of Metaphysics. She's an ordained minister, practitioner, speaker, and author. As CEO and founder of Quantum Entanglement, her passion is to teach, mentor, coach, and help others believe in themselves enough to chase their dreams and love their life. So this mind-expanding book, written by Joanna Crowder, encompasses not only the journey we go through in life to manifest our reality, but also how to flow with the seasons and become aware of how the Mazzaroth, or zodiac, influences our energies and behaviors. Joanna speaks about astrology, seasons, time, family affairs, adversities, controversial thoughts on 2020, manifestation tips, metaphysics, and the Bible, connecting all the puzzle pieces and bringing you syncretism, a way to see union in the world we live in today versus separation, hate, and division. And then I'll just read this little testimonial. Joanna has the rare ability to explain the spiritual world in layman's terms with real life stories and action steps. Her book is a must buy for anyone curious about taking their life to the next level. International speaker and 5-time author, Cornell Thomas.
Nice.
So that kind of gives you a whole background of what it is. Yeah.
We brought up 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many people secretly are in reality, it was their best year ever.
Right.
That's not something that many people can say. That's not something many people can say when you look at what went down, what played out. I could easily put that in a top 3 year for me, and it wouldn't have happened without that event, when you look at folks like us in the truth community, we saw this coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw this coming, which put so much validation to what we've been saying for so long, and then it's here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what a world shaker, in more ways than one, personally. And so that's really catapulted people's desire to go inward. Mm-hmm. That's really the big thing. So perfect timing on the book. Perfect timing on the book. So, and I like the timing with Aries too. Wow, you really sync that up, big time.
I mean, I had to publish it. What was funny is that when I knew it was coming up, right? I mean, the end of Pisces, and then I was like,
yep, here it comes.
March 21st is coming, and I really wanted to publish it and launch it on March 21st. I was like, it has to be launched on March 21st. So here I am, a new author. I had no idea what I was doing. I honestly didn't even know that this was called a manuscript. I honestly had no idea. I was like, I just wrote a book. Yeah. And I'm about 3 weeks out from March 21st. And I'm in the process of finishing and still writing at the same time. And I go, okay, it's time for editing. It's time for formatting. It's time for this whole publishing thing. Now what? And I start, talking to publishers and things like that. And they're like, 7 to 10 weeks is the quickest we can do. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. I need this March 21st. Yeah. So what ended up happening was I ended up having to learn how to do it all on my own. Yeah. And I was like, I felt like Neo being like, learn how to be an author, and for the last 3, for those 3 weeks, it actually injured my arm from just so much that I was doing. But I learned how to be, how to self-publish, and the whole process of
self-reliance.
Just amazing. And now I'm like, oh, that was a warm-up. I have so much I can write now.
And that the whole discovery of self. I mean, what a lesson. What a lesson, because, imagine spring manifestation launching in August.
Yes,
or
exactly.
Having to wait another year. So, but
not that anyone can't buy it at any other time.
No, right.
But the whole point of the spring manifestation was I manifested it in spring. So,
right. There you go. Yeah. Beautiful. That's awesome. So why don't we, obviously syncretism, why don't we segue into that? Why don't we, the definition of it is the merging of all religions, all science, and all fields of knowledge. I think that's pretty accurate off the Wikipedia description of it. And really what I came to find out is this isn't new. It might seem new to us today. It might appear new, but this is really a concept of discovery of the truth that dates back a long time. And there are famous names that we all kind of know when we get into this: the Manly P. Halls, the Thomas Burgoynes, Name a few. You can go back even to the turn of the century to like Giordano Bruno. That was a guy that Santos has mentioned that really, these people were dangerous. They were very dangerous to the established belief, whatever that belief was, religion, science. And that's what I've come to find is that it merges the science and religion. It's not enough to just be a religion. I really hate that word because it's so many people are turned off by it and have rejected it, and that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of where our audience is at. I tell people, hey, don't throw that Bible away. Don't leave that thing, keep that thing handy. We're going to need that. So with syncretism, it's the process of discovering that there's more to this. And I use the word esoteric, because that's what it is, a deeper meaning that the knowers want to go for. So that's where we lead into syncretism. We can relate that to the Bible. We can relate it to the sciences, because the way I see it, and I don't know if you see it this way, but as you read the allegory, as you look at the Egyptians, you realize the science and became the origin. When you look at light, it became the origin. And that's really where the beauty, that's what really sets the ball just down the hill. I mean, it's just an avalanche of wow, when you look at that. So why don't you talk about, your, just discuss syncretism.
Well, let me tell you how I kind of came across it. So you kind of get a history of the puzzle pieces that I was collecting along the way.
Yeah.
Because it definitely is not something that, syncretism doesn't just fall in your lap and you go, oh, syncretism here. No. I understand it now,
Yep.
Nothing like that. It's more of synchronizing all these puzzle pieces, which are all different beliefs and different, just let's just put it as different beliefs. Right. And you're just picking them up. And instead of saying, oh, I don't agree with this one. And I don't believe in this and throwing it away. It's like, okay, here it is. And I'll look at it.
Yep.
And then here's another piece and I'll look at that, and just looking at everything and trying to find what's the common denominator. What puts it all together? What is the pattern here? What am I seeing that is the same in all? And so when I was writing my meditation thesis, I came across the book. I think it was Jesus Christ, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and Buddha. It's a book of all four and all their sayings. And it would say, the way Jesus would say it, the way, each one would say it, and they were all saying the same thing. And so I started realizing, okay, so they all have the same, almost, they're just using a little bit, sometimes different words, but really it's just the same concept.
Yep.
And that started opening my eyes to different religions and looking at, okay, what are their beliefs and how does that compare to these beliefs? And, everybody has, let's just say, a different box. But once you uncover the box and come out of the box, it's like, okay, well, I could see now the connections to all these boxes, where some people want to stay or not want to stay, but just they're in a box and don't know that there's more outside of the box.
Yeah.
So looking at all the different religions and the different sayings, that kind of opened my eyes up first. But then I was really into astrology when I was younger and just growing up. Not that I understood it the way I do now, but I was very open to it. I was raised Catholic and I wasn't fully convinced 100% of just all the doctrine, because I'm just a very non-authority, like my authority comes from God and nobody else.
Same here. Yeah. Same here.
So, they'd say, kneel down, get up, and kneel down, get up, and do this and do that and do it. And I would just sit there and I'd watch everybody just doing everything, that one person. And I'm like, why is this one person the messenger between God when God is, I always kind of knew, like, I'm like, God is inside. I'm always having a conversation with God. I don't get it. And I asked questions and the answers there wouldn't be answers. They would just be empty with more questions and more questions. And I think that led me to become a philosopher, because I had so many questions. And throughout, finding all this and then finding Santos and all of that, it all came together, like as if I had collected all these pieces for so many years. And then I finally started seeing the puzzle piece. I think that's like when you really start seeing, and your third eye really starts to awaken and open and see all the little synchronicities that you normally wouldn't be aware of, but they're there because the universe is always talking to us. I became really observant, and that's when I started really meditating heavily, and everything was just, your world starts to fall apart as the world you thought you knew, and you're just like, am I in the Truman Show? Is this real? What is real? Because you just don't know what's real anymore on this path. And then you start, going inwardly, like you said, and you find the way, and the way is very narrow, and only those that go within find it. And so you look crazy to those that are without, but those that are within truly get it. And so I think they see that shining, that light, and they go, okay, whatever this crazy person's talking about, I want some of that because they look happy.
So. And it's beautiful destruction. It's similar story. Many years of exhausting religion. And when I say religion, it's the inside out model. It's the inside out model that was given to us, and for those that don't, that are watching this, you've got to look at Santos. Nobody covers this better than him.
Oh yeah.
Is Rome. If you look at that was one of the big things for me is, so here we are, we've held this book forever, grown up with it and all that, and read it, and all of a sudden you realize that, because the literal interpretation and in Hebrew culture was the age 1 through 12. It's the lowest ring. And according to a lot of the guys like Manly P. Hall, there's seven levels of interpretation to this book. Right. And only those that kind of graduated were given the next level. And of course, we can see that now, why that was so. But, there's nothing I've found related to the religious texts where you can pick up evidence. I call them breadcrumbs, right? When you say it's like a breadcrumb here and a breadcrumb there, and you're putting them in a basket, you're like, oh my gosh, 7, 12, why does sun come up? The SUN, and these are the breadcrumbs that you are chasing back to the original divinity, to the original deal, because you've been living under an inside out model. That's a hard thing for a lot of people. That's a really hard thing. Only those at the right place at the right time will ever dare to look at that. So, but syncretism being that process, would you agree, that's that process of. It's
the model of you start with religion, because you do come into this world with some type of, you're given a religion, or you're born into one. And it teaches you about, your morals, and it teaches you about certain things that, do, it's basically good or evil, right? God or the devil. But really they're all just aspects of the light and dark, right? So there's just duality, and how to process this duality within us, how to balance it, how to nurture the divine and the, the feminine and the male, and how to have that Christ consciousness and all that stuff. So it takes a while, but you're also guided divinely, like towards syncretism when you're ready, when your mind is open enough to be able to, because even when I was hearing it, I mean, we're all kind of skeptical when we're looking for the truth, because we've been lied to for so long. We're like, okay, let me use my discernment. And of course, the discernment comes from that intuitiveness that silence gives you. And the discernment, you're like, okay, that sounds true. Okay, yeah, that's true too. And you start to just feel the truthness behind it. And your left brain, your logical mind, is still needing to get those pieces to kind of unravel what you've been taught and conditioned. Like, well, then why does this happen? Or why doesn't this make sense? And we still have to answer those questions to ourselves, to go past the doctrine and to go move on to perfection, like it says in Hebrews 6:1. So it's a journey for everybody that is, and they're all on different paths, and you know, some are still learning and still have many reincarnations to go. But I feel like we're those that come into our path and they're guided towards following it or towards communicating or collaborating and things like that. It's because, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and the teacher's ready, the student appears, etc. So I feel like we're all part of this cluster of, okay, we're there's a light over here and I think it's going to help me. And then we're guided towards it to, you know, expand our consciousness pretty much.
Right. It's a path you have direct responsibility and direct control where, you know, as you're picking up those breadcrumbs, you know, and everybody has a starting point where, you know, especially coming out of the background of the Bible, you know, one of the funny things was always, so as growing up with the Bible, there's those passages that just have never made sense. And the Christian will just kind of gloss over them. They'll never think deeper. You know, some might, you know, even myself, I consider myself I question everything, but I didn't always question everything. So, you know, when I came back to those passages, the whole concept of light and the nature and the sevenfold and the Egypt, you know, all that, you know, as I discovered that, I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder they hid this stuff. That, you know,
we didn't have Google back then either.
No. That's a good point too.
Yeah.
And the writers of those religious texts were under censorship. And two, it was a qualification. I think it was kind of a qualification where we're not just going to let these things out to the fools. You know, we're not going to throw our pearls before swine, you know, to use a Bible term. And another big thing too was, you know, the elite loved to parade a lot of that. You know, the Saturn, the Eye of Horus, as above, so below. Those concepts I had seen because I was always kind of the classic conspiracy theorist. And so you see these all the time and you're like, the biggest tipping point for me is, why did they put that there? You know, what is it they're putting? Why? And now you're getting into the dark occult, light occult, you know, and that's where, boom, you're off and running.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that because that is so important because there's a stigma, or, you know, if you say the word occult, people automatically go, oh, that's bad.
Hand up.
And the thing is, let me just tell you, yes, there is a dark occult, definitely. But there's also the light occult. I mean, occult means hidden. So there's hidden information that is of the light, that is for, you know, the children that are of the light. And then there is the dark. And so we as light workers, light seekers and truthers and of the light, we are trying to put that light and you know, shed that light onto that darkness and show. And so I think the thing is that when we're going from that 3-dimensional, you know, this is our world, blah blah blah, and I love this and that, you know, just the 3-dimensional kind of thoughts, to that 4th dimension when it's more you're opening up conspiracies and you're looking into what's the dark and you're going, wow, I didn't know so much darkness existed. And then you start learning about it and you start sharing it. That's where some people get stuck in that 4th dimension and think that it's all just bad. So they see all these symbolisms and they think, oh, it's all bad. It's all bad. So when you start showing some of that symbolism, they go, oh, you're associated with the bad. But then they don't understand that there's also the hidden truth that's of light that they use also, the because it's just light and dark, which both come from the same oneness. It's the yin and the yang, right? The electromagnetic. And so with the light, you know, here we are trying to shed that light, trying to be the light, trying to all this, but it's scary for some people because they don't know where they're going with it. You know, they don't know if it can be sucked into the darkness or, you know, but that is not our goal. And you should be able to see that with people's just heart and their intentions.
Right. And that's the damage of Rome. That's the damage of the Catholic Vatican thing. They scare you away from what you should have been looking at all along.
Right.
And they do it in movies. They all you have to do in a Western world, Bible backed world, you know, as the Bible being the predominant religious text of the Western world, is show them those witchy, dark. You know, if you look in a movie where the king has an astrologer, are they ever a guy with a family and kids? No, he's like the most demonic looking thing you can find. You know, that's how they do it. That's how
Yeah.
they scare you away, you know. And this has happened. You can point to a million of these. And I think one of the words that I saw a while back that really helps to destigma the whole occult is de-occult, because that's really what you're doing, is you're de-occulting. And that's bringing it to light. So if you look at it from a de-occulting standpoint, it's not as scary. But you know, bringing, for those of you watching, this is where you can really go back and look at the original nature of the creative light. This is where this really breaks down, you know, the good and evil. That was something for me, because that creative light, the dual, the male and female, you know, here we are, the Elohim. So a good transition into our symbology.
Israel.
Israel. These terms come up of Michael, Gabriel, you know, these EL ending or prefix or whatever. They're not in there by accident. And when you look at the nature of sunlight, it's both good and it's bad. That's something Santos really has talked about a lot. You've got to understand that nature of the light, because it's the source of the duality in the material world.
And he brought up in that aspect in the etymology presentation that I was in Miami, he had mentioned, and this stuck with me, about the light and the dark. You do need the light during the day to help you see, right, where you're going. And it hinders you being able to see inwardly. But then at night, you know, it helps you see inwardly, but it doesn't help you see outwardly. So they both are good in a sense, and they both are bad in a sense. So it's about finding that balance.
Right. And that's the serotonin of the pineal gland, you know. Yep, no accident there. But and then an example of the synchronicity right there, you know, the syncretism, I should say, not synchronicity, that it all rolls into one. You know, one of the big tools in syncretism is the symbolism. And, you know, I sort of gauge my truther on one of the big things is I kind of know how much time you've put in and where you've evolved to. And one of them's at word etymology. Like, I think that's a big one. Like, if you meet people that are like into the word etymology, boy, you're at a kind of a new graduation. You know, these are sort of the steps
We're
of
like,
the
you know this?
Right. It's like I joke, it's like we're living our own mystery school here. And that's really what it is. You're unpacking thousands of years, hundreds and you know, years of hidden information. So
know thyself. You're getting to know thyself at the deepest level.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is. It's the reclaiming of the divinity, and it plays into everything, our word etymology and the structure of the religious texts. You know, recently I was listening to something on Hinduism, and here we go with the same words playing out into the same, you know, and I'm like, you know, here we are in a whole nother, like I say, I hate the word religion, but a whole nother religion, and another book, the Bhagavad Gita, and the same things are popping up again. So again, another example of breadcrumbs. Do you want to talk about,
I was just doing that today with Judaism, with the Torah and all this other stuff, and I was like, oh, that's all the same. It's just one sliver of the whole thing. It's all the same.
Torah, Ra.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big ones in Christianity for the questioners, because there's not many of those, you know, in the churches, was the Elohim, you know, the L with the male and female. Like, wait a minute, God's a male and a female?
Androgynous,
when you go back to that doesn't make sense. Of course, you're never taught, you never look at anything. And even if you did question it, those, no fault to the pastor. The basis of study never covered that. So the theology schools have never included that. That's been out of there forever. And so, and whatnot. But the symbolism, let's talk about the Bible. Let's, get some teasers or, some beginnings, if you will, for where to kind of look. Obviously, astrology. I mean, that's the Bible's signature. It's its signature, but that's just one element. Go ahead.
And I talk a lot about that in my book, actually, because I mean, because I talk about the Bible, I talk about I bring in the scriptures that correspond to whatever it is that I'm talking about that sign. So that's fun. I love that. I love doing that. I have a whole notebook of notes of all the deacons, because I wasn't aware of all the deacons that were within each sign or each house.
Yeah, right.
10 degrees so there's 30 degrees in a house. And then there's every 10 degrees, there's different deacon, a different star constellation, if you will. It's a different picture. I look at it as different pictures. And I didn't know that each one had something to do the story of the ego and spirit. It's all about, for example, Pisces, the belief and the doubt. And it's always, the bond between your higher self and your lower nature, your animal nature. And so the Bible is covered with a lot of, slaughtering of animals. Let's just say that. And really, that's all talking about slaughtering the animal nature within us. And think of all the animals that could have been completely saved if they had known that. But that's just one aspect, because there's so many animals because of the astrology, like they're the goat and the horse and you name it, the bull, what are they?
Yeah.
The crab. Yeah, the scorpion. So, but all of that is in there. Sorry. Let's see. Especially with light, I don't know why people
and you don't
question it.
You just said something. It just really hit me, where you look at the slaughtering of animals, and the literal has caused damage. Taking that literal causes damage. And, and that's where a lot of it, and that's where the inside out model breaks down, and it's broken down. And we're at the evolution of the exhaustion with it. I think we are. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's just, you said something that was interesting. So let's talk about the coming of the return of Christ, right? Let's just talk about that. The way that it's put in there, when are you coming back? When is the end of the world? Which is really when are you coming back, but when is your presence? When are you going to be here? When is your presence going to be here? And not the end of the world, but the end of the era, the end of the age. And the way that he answered it, I think it was Luke 22:10. There's no way that even if you did take it literal, I just wonder, you know what I mean? The man, you'll see a man standing there with a pitcher of water, follow him into the house. He enters into the upper room. It was furnished and ready for you. In what, I just can't possibly think of, if I was to take that literal, how can you take that literal? You know what I mean? I can't even comprehend the thought.
Right. And that's where you have to break out of the belief cycle of, in this case, we're talking Christianity, but any religion that's dwelling on the literal interpretation, the mental gymnastics that has to be performed to make that work, it doesn't work.
What city and what man and what, I mean,
first of all, where does a man carry water in anywhere in world culture? Historically, it's the women that carry the water. So
Yeah.
that right there puts a whole new dynamic onto the man that carries water. There's only one place that you can find a man carrying water, and that's in the zodiac, in Aquarius. So
Right.
that's significant. Like,
Follow him
that's
into the house. I mean, like,
into the house. Right, right.
each thing is a house, each, each sign. And yeah, I think once, I mean, of course it's encoded in layers, but I think once you start looking at things like that, then you start going, okay, where does that lead me to? What does this really mean? If it's his presence and it's already here, then what is it talking about? And then you go further into, the kingdom is within you.
Yeah.
It doesn't come with observation. You're not going to say low here, low there. It's the kingdom of God is
Yeah.
within you. And then you're like, okay, well, Jesus says, seek first the kingdom. Okay, well, if seeking the kingdom is and the kingdom is within you, well, then I have to go inwardly. And if then later on the Bible says Christ is already in you,
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, Christ is in me, the kingdom is within me, everything is within me. The kingdom doesn't come with observation.
Mhm.
The temple isn't built with, saw or hammer. You can't
No.
hear it.
Right. It's King Solomon's temple.
Right.
Yeah.
You are, don't you know your temple and your body is the temple of God? All these things that add up, and you're just like, hold up, there's more to this. There's something else deeper. And it's not just that, yes, we have a spirit within us, we have a light within us. Yes, of course. Like, you take away the light bulb, and that doesn't mean that the light is still not there. Like, the light is still there. You put it in, you put a new light bulb, there's the light again. But at the same time, I forgot where I was going with this. What was I saying?
Yeah, that's all right. I lose track about.
I know, right?
I
Because it's
haven't
so
done it
deep.
yet. I can't believe I haven't done that.
I know. It's like sometimes I go so deep, and then I'm like further deep, and I'm like, wait, what was I saying?
Right.
Yeah, we keep going and we keep going, and we don't realize that it's all inside. The journey's inside, but we're looking outwardly at everything, and we're distracted. And really, it's like, we don't need a book. We don't need anything. We just need ourselves, and we'll be guided by the spirit within us.
Right. It's like the first man ever. What Bible would he have had? What preset code of living would have been there for him? The nature would have been there. And so I always thought about that. I was like, what the first guy did? They didn't have a Bible in the Bible. They didn't hand that torch off. What would create that model of living? It would be within, and I was thinking, so not to get off tangent, but something that I think because this was something that really became fascinating with me, and it goes right on in with all this, is the spiritual alchemy. Like, the spiritual alchemy. I don't know if you've done much on that or looked at it, and not to get on it, but if you're interested, folks, that's something, because that is again, the lead into gold allegory, or the literal physical. Then you have the spiritual side, and that's where you replace the deity does it for me and I do it for me model, and back to the Egyptians, and that one's, the alchemy is amazing. So anyway, I didn't
Well,
mean to get
no,
off
plus
subject.
it just takes you from, I mean, first of all these texts that are so sacred are all parables and allegories for that deeper truth of that spiritual alchemy and physiological part, that what happens to us that allows the spirit to, like, really be in alignment with us and really run through us. And so that takes the victim mentality of, I will be saved by something else, that we used to have, to, it also takes part of me, and I have to do the work. If I don't do the work,
right,
then I'm blocked. I have emotional distress. I have stress, like, mentally, physically. If my temple's not running the way that it should, how will my spirit or soul or anything, like, be able to function? And so that takes the responsibility back to ourselves. Okay, how am I living virtuously? Am I doing the thing? And it takes, when I started watching all those videos, I was like, man, I have a lot to do. I have a lot of work to do. And every time I thought I was getting closer, I realized how far I was. And even now with like our food, you know, we've become, wow, we used to eat everything under the sun, and now we're pretty much plant-based. And like our whole family. And so I look back at where we were and where we are, and it's, yes, it's been huge, but we're still just in the beginning. I'm like, we realize how far we still are because we're trying to increase our frequency, and the higher the frequency of food needs to be, and so forth and so on. And that aspect happens mind, body, and spirit. And when you have so much going on in your life and you're not taking the time to really focus on the mental of learning the stuff, the physical of treating your body and your temple the way that it should be healthy wise, you know, and not putting the toxins in it, because it kunda buffer, it doesn't allow this, you know, to raise to gold, to have the inner crucifixion of the chrism, then we can't reach that pure ascension, that bliss, because we ourselves are blocking it by the things that we're doing. So
nature doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And that's that narrow path.
Right. And, you know, and to speak to that, the practices that have been in those texts forever, you know, big one's meditation. You mentioned that. To me, I don't know that it's right to put one over the other, but meditation, hands down. Like for people that never, you know, meditated and really knowing what that is. I mean, a lot of people hear the word, they think they know, they don't know. And, you know, I never
mental break.
Yeah.
A mental break.
Yeah.
It's a mental break.
And there's a science to that too. There's a psychological side. There's a biochemical side. You know, I never used I grew up in church, and I never used the word, this will tell you in evolution. Okay. In evolution, I never used the word sacred until that door opened up. Those words never came out of my mouth when I referred to meditation, fasting, sacred. That's why they're in all these texts. And, you know, growing up in church, you might meet one devout guy that'll try fasting for a day or two, but, you know, that's about all you're ever going to get. And it won't last. Certainly meditation is evil. That's for summoning, you know, demons and all that. I mean, I've heard all that in church. You know, and then I've even gotten into, I don't know how much you've looked into it, but the light with meditation. So we get into magnetism, you know, and, you know, you see the Buddhists nailed it. The Hindus nailed it, on the mindful practice. Like you have to, the mindfulness has to be there. What we're talking about will not really have much of an impact until the mind is still. And that's in the Bible. Be still before the Lord. How many times do you talk about that? People think it's just sitting there being still. It's still of mind, because the electrical process is interfering with the magnetic process, so to speak. And that's my sort of way of, and it's only when the magnetic process opens that you reap the benefit. And that's the thing. Like when you're at that point, when you practice meditation, when you practice prayer, and fasting, things like that, ancient practice, the direct benefit, because it hits that alchemical process, like there's no denying it. And you really can't explain that. You just have to.
The electricity part would be the five senses, because the five senses are, you know, that's what we're tithing, you know, we're the 10%, the left brain. And so we're opening up to the magnetism would be the right brain, would be the spirit, would be the infinite, really, or the connection to it. And so in order to do that, the five senses. And so when you still the mind, it's like yes, there's no thought, but you don't want to hear anything, you don't want to smell anything, like you're just disconnecting. So I always look at it like the phone, your phone needs to be charged, and if we don't sit there and charge, but in this case it would be, with magnetism, not electricity, but
Right.
But that's we're still beings that operate the same way.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people have that, they're in beta mode constantly, and we need to get to that renewal of the mind, which, you got to go through all the stages of consciousness between beta and alpha, theta, delta, earth, earth, water, air, fire, which is the Holy Spirit. And that's the true baptism that we ourselves have to do in order to reach that point.
Right.
And that's a process, and it's hard. And a lot of people don't know, like, well, what's the purpose of meditation? Like, it sounds good, but like, until you have all the breadcrumbs and you realize how it's all the components together make up the whole, like, my spaceship is not going to rise if all the things aren't in place.
Right. Because it's beyond theory. You go beyond just a theory that dieting and plant-based, if you will. You go beyond the theory of meditation. You go beyond the theory. It's like direct application, where, especially meditation, because meditation's kind of like dieting. I mean, how many people really give dieting? We're in a time now where a lot of people are doing that, but you have to put the time in, and
a lifestyle change.
It is, but the payoff is, well, let me give you the payoff. Monks move into the Tibetan, into the Himalayas and separate themselves from the material world. You don't do that under that default electrical brain, the ego mind, as they call it. You trying to convey how that separation happens, and the Bible says, be not of this world. We are in the world, but not of it. We don't see that. You don't see, you might see a guy that chastises things in the world, but there's no hard path, right-hand path, of really difficult lifestyle changes, really difficult, that the normal, regular, everyday people just don't make. And only through recognizing that separation, it's like the old saying, when you become the observer of thought, that day you wake up to the observer of thought idea, and you can't do that without meditation. It's kind of game over for. It's game over for the ego, and whatnot. But
because then you just have that connection, and then it's just nonstop, just there.
That's right.
It's part of you.
Download, and whatnot. So, but anyway, anything. I'm thinking. So,
and the Bible is a spiritual. It needs to be looked at in a spiritual way. Like, that's why it says that, the letter kills, but the spirit gives life, because it's allegorical. It says it doesn't speak without a parable. Those that go within, know, like they know, they understand, they see, they hear in a much deeper sense. Mythology, for example, I just have to say, when I was growing up, I was always like, why are we taught mythology? What is the importance of mythology? Why do we get taught this? Because we never really understand, what is up with mythology, until you start going, okay, these mythological stories are all talking about deeper truths, just like these fairy tales, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's talking about light and the seven colors of the spectrum, the light within us, right? Differentiated in the seven. And that all these stories have that same common denominator: the hero, the villain, the sun, the moon, the yin and the yang, and just how to balance that out in our own lives, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Yep. In all senses of it,
mind, body, and soul. And for those of you watching, you can start. I would probably say, wouldn't you agree? The 7 and the 12 are maybe the great pathway into the symbolism of the Bible and deeper meaning of the Bible is looking at, because that's the one that those are sort of the ones that are the beginners to, or the foundations to, all the religious texts, where the 7 keeps coming up and the 12 keeps coming
or
up.
the 9 keeps coming up. And I think that's when you really start looking, okay, everything that's on the east, you see the east a million times, and you just know that because your north is always, up. The east is always your right side, and it's always that right hemisphere. And so when you start, cast your net to the right side, how many fish did you find? 153 fish. What does that equal? 9 in numerology. And you go, okay, so it's talking about consciousness. It's talking about casting that wisdom to the right hemisphere so that you can, cast your net, cast the focus your energy to the right so that you can get that wisdom. Right. And so when you start looking at the numbers and you start adding them up, like the 144,000, and that equals 9, you go, oh, it's talking about consciousness. You add up the 666. What is that? It's also, 9, but it's lower consciousness. And you start going, okay, there's a pattern. And when you start opening up your mind to the fact that it is in layers and there's lots of patterns and there's lots of versions, then you start seeing them. But you have to open up your mind to knowing that there is more to it. And we're just in the beginning. Like
we
really are. It's the age of Aquarius.
It is, great. It's amazing. So when you look at Revelations in the Bible, I grew up around that. You have, 300 different Bible scholars arguing over a literal return.
Right.
And I've told, various Christian friends, put astrology in there and see where that takes you. Yes. Put the astrological element into Revelations. Of course, that is, you don't just do that. You've got, back to the breadcrumbs, you've got to unpack this esoteric field, if you will, to begin to put astrology into Revelations. But it's so you have 66 books of the Bible. The Christian will take 65 of those literal, and then they get to the most allegorical book in the Bible, and now suddenly allegorical is applicable. Oh, right. Well, that one's allegorical. Like what a destruction of model, the literal model. And when you put Revelations into an astrological context, now the Virgin of the Apocalypse. Well, now we're talking Virgo. What is it? The sun at the hands and the moon at the feet, and those things, those are all astrology based. So you folks there's plenty of stuff out there on that. You can spend, there's so much time on that, but go ahead.
I think if you look at the Bible with like the Genesis being the beginning of, the generative area, and just, the lower nature, the lower self, when we talk about Egypt and just, took you out of Egypt and bondage, which is your lower nature, your lower chakras, all the way up to the journey of revelation. When you have this revelation and you have these epiphanies and you have these ahas and you are awakened and you're just, you've raised yourself up to the right hand, side of the Father, then it's more of a journey. It's more of like, okay, these stories are telling a journey of your own self evolution and your own journey all the way up to Christ, which is within you.
Right. And that's the as above, so below, as within, so without. And another one that you see, the as above, so below, which biblically, looking at this for quite some time, for more than average, a couple years now, I just realized the other day, on earth as it is in heaven.
Yes. That each one of our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. It goes all the way around the zodiac. Did you know
the zodiac? No, I didn't know that.
Yes. It's so amazing. Like, I'll tell you what part.
You could almost go as far to say, I haven't looked at this. This could be a whole dissertation, that the Genesis to Revelations is a sine wave. I don't know. It's kind of goofy, but I kind of thought about it. Wouldn't that be another level of probably brilliance? And that's what really intrigued me and pushed me into this whole syncretism, was the ancients knew their stuff. Like they
Mm-hmm.
really knew their stuff. They knew their science. They knew the true theology, the one theology. And that's where I really was like, it opened up the philosophers. It opened up all of that.
I mean, think of all the books that have been burnt just so that we don't get this information.
Right,
And then it
right.
takes me back to Bruno that you had mentioned
Hmm.
earlier. Like
Yeah,
when I wrote my dissertation, I talked about Bruno and his past and how they gagged him and how they like all these people, they would just torture them in front of people, kind of like they did with the whole witch trials and everything to kind
yep,
of show you, look, if you do try to do anything outside of this box that we have you in, that we want everybody
right.
to believe this box, if you say anything outside of it, this is what's going to happen to you. And he's like, I don't care what you say to me. Like, you're what you're punishing me for is like your stuff is way evil and my
He
stuff
has
will,
a
like over time we've realized, wow, they've been trying to censor us forever, like forever.
Right, right, and that is the subject of the Inquisitions. That's another one for the, um, the truther is you can't deny. Of course, our fake history sells that off as the church just trying to protect themselves from heresy. It's very one dimensional. It doesn't go beyond. But to the truther, wait, what were they saying? What were they doing that was so dangerous to that authority model that would justify a quote inquisition? And that really intrigued me. That's really what intrigued me. What was it that these people were doing? And that Giordano Bruno is a classic example. He has a famous quote when he was, at the point of his execution,
Mm-hmm.
where, if you read that quote, you go beyond someone standing up for a belief.
Mm-hmm.
You go beyond someone's, that's the
That
thing
quote
about.
made me cry.
Oh yeah, that's funny you say that, because that resonated with me. Like you can see that, no matter where you are on that path, that quote just rings. It's like, wow. You don't just do those things for a belief.
Mm-mm.
You play it safe, and whatnot.
I
So
have it right here too.
yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. He said, perhaps your fear in passing judgment on me is greater than mine in receiving it.
Right.
And he was remembered for his death at the stake. Yeah,
Hmm.
Giordano gagged and burned alive. That's
Right.
horrible.
I know. It's that should intrigue you, folks. That quote should intrigue you. When you look at, and the other thing that opened up the syncretism path was seeing how old this really is. This
Oh,
this Roman
ancient.
Roman cult. And then we come right to full circle today. They're not going to back down without a fight. They
Oh
are
yeah.
not, and the age of Aquarius. We can go on forever about that. But that's also pulled people into this discussion. You know, it's pulled people into the intrigue of what's going on right now. And there are traditional Christians that have defected of mind out of that religion model and have questioned, because it's not like we're talking about something 20 years from now. It's right now.
Right.
How many people this was the year of something ain't right. This was the year of there's something ain't right here.
Something. And they're just having their own kind of wake up calls, hitting
Right.
rock bottom.
Yep.
That rock bottom is really what kind of wakes you up in the first place.
Yep.
Just like, oh, there has to be something else other than this. And um, like you started off in the beginning, when all this went down, I'm like, well, nothing's changed for me. I'm a hermit and
Hmm.
I don't really go out much and I don't really,
Yeah.
um,
It only strengthened.
it only helped everything. And I think
Right.
a lot of people, what it ended up doing is they just had to focus on themselves, which was a really big wake up call. And so this was, I was just the other day, I think it was yesterday, I don't even remember if it was last night or not, but we were having a bonfire outside.
Hmm.
And I said to everybody, to my kids and my husband, I'm like, what was the best thing about 2020 for you? like, I don't know why I asked them this yesterday, but I did, like, what was the best thing? And it's because everyone is so focused on how horrible it was that, there's just as equally something good as to the consequences of all of it.
Right. And most people that would say that, I think they'd almost say, well, it was us being together. We went and did this. It forced us out of our pattern. My family, we did a lot of that, like those are the things that matter.
Right.
Those are the things. They weren't a vacation to somewhere. Obviously couldn't do that. They were coming back to a simplicity. And because the noise and the busyness is the distraction.
Yeah. So it shifts your perspective.
It's shift. And there's a Carl Jung quote that you only come through consciousness through pain. And that's the Aquarian apocalyptic, if you will, deal is how much pain, so anyway, but well, we've hit an hour, Joanna, and I appreciate it. And anything you want to plug? Do you want to put out your website, anything like that?
So my website,
this will be on your will it be the Love Your Life Tribe? Or
no, it's
personal?
actually on my regular personal.
Okay.
But let me put
I'll share this, I'll share this all over. So
so that's my website. Well, I also have joannacrowder.com, but either one will show you the link to the book.
Books on Amazon.
The book is on Amazon. Yeah. And so and then I also have workshops. I have a free workshop coming up on Monday in the Love Your Life Tribe for chakra workshop. So we're going to be tuning in our chakras. So it's like a 9-day ordeal. So you can register for that as well under workshops. And what else? I think that's about it that I have going on. I do weekly trainings in that Love Your Life Tribe group.
Facebook. Check out your personal Facebook page has a lot of videos. I noticed he has like healing. I think you had meditation. That's on your personal, right?
No, I think that one was the Love Your Life Tribe.
Was the Love Your Life? Okay.
Yeah, that's where every Wednesday I do a different training on something, and I have content for days. So you can learn a lot there.
Yeah, that's good. And that's great content. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Enjoyed it, learned a lot.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. I mean, this is stuff people don't normally talk about. And this is what I do. This is what I talk about. So to me, it's easy. And I just think that more people with an open mind to it, we're not saying, hey, believe and follow. We're just saying, open your mind to the fact that you can have a better life. You can have a better you and to be closer to God. So, or whatever aspect you call that. But
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, well, I appreciate it. So thank you so much. You take care. Yes, you have a great weekend too.
Bye.
Bye.